Alright, today we're going to be talking a little bit about powers of I and how that kind of works. So, just, to recall, I is just the square root of negative 1. So, the square root of negative 1 is I. So, then if we square both sides, then we have I squared, which will then just be negative 1. And so, really, just by using these two things here, mostly just I squared equals negative 1, we can actually find I to the power of any number. So, for example, if I want to do I to the power of 37, I actually want you to kind of pause the video and see if you can do this yourself. Hint, use some properties of exponents, but if you're really stuck, just unpause the video and we'll go through it together. Let me just quickly move my light here so you can kind of see. So I to the power of 37. Alright, assuming you tried to give it an attempt. Again, there are many ways you could approach this, but one way is thinking about, hey, why don't we just rewrite this as I to the first times I to the 36, right? That works because I to 37 is the same as I to the first times I to 36, right? You add these, 36 plus 1, that's 37, so this works. And so then now, if we have I, right, I is just I to the first, and then I to the 36, we can actually use this I squared to help us, because then we can write this as I squared to the 18th power, right? Because, properties of exponents, 2 times 18 is 36, so this is the same as this, so this works. And so remember, I squared is negative 1, right? So then we can rewrite this as I times negative 1 to the 18th power. And so negative 1 to the 18th power, now we just have to think about even versus odd exponents and how that relates to negative numbers, right? And so since we're multiplying negative 1 by an even number, remember, negative 1 to the 18th power is just multiplying negative 1 by itself 18 times. And so really, the best way to kind of think about this is, well, if I multiply negative times a negative, I'll get a positive number, right? Negative times negative, positive number, and really it'll be positive times positive times positive times positive as long as we have, again, an even exponent, because if you have an odd exponent, then eventually you'll have some odd one out right here, and that odd one out will be a negative number, and so you have all these positives times one negative, and that will just make the result negative. So it'll ruin the entire thing and just make it negative. But again, if you have an even exponent right here, then you will have these pairs, right? These negative pairs that'll make it negative, positive, 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 because negative times negative is positive, and then you'll just keep having positives, right? And then that'll just be positive. And so really, if you think about that and how this is just negative 1 to the 18th, that's just going to be positive 1. At the end of the day, and if you're really stuck, you can actually do the multiplication by multiplying negative 1 by itself 18 times. So just keep going, and then you'll see that it'll just be positive 1. So that's one way to look at it as well. But again, once you get in the hang of it, or just if you have a good number sense, you can see the impact of whether this is even or odd, then you can say, hey, this is just going to be positive 1. And so, if we look at this here, and how this is going to be positive 1, we're just going to then have I times 1, and then this is just going to be I. So then, therefore, I to the 37th power is just going to be I. Okay? And so that's kind of how we do these kinds of problems. And again, if you want to even do these quicker, some other good things to kind of know, maybe, right, just besides I squared equals negative 1, is, for example, if we want to know what I cubed equals to, right, we can just multiply both sides by I, and we'll just get I cubed is just going to be negative I. And then, hey, I want to know what I to the fourth is. Well, we just multiply both sides by I, and then we just get I to the fourth equals negative I squared. And remember, I squared is negative 1, so it's I to the fourth equals negative of negative 1, and so that's just going to be positive 1. And so really, some good facts to know when solving these problems is, again, Remember, I is the square root of -1. Okay, that's the bare minimum, okay? If you forget everything else, the one thing you should know is this. And then remember, I squared, -1, I cubed, right? We just saw that, -I, and then I to the 4th is 1. And so these are really, if you know these 4 things, really even just these 3 things for these problems specifically, this you should just know kind of in general. Which again, you can use this to derive these 3. You can solve these problems where you have to find powers of I. And so, really, one other piece of advice here is, again, if you have I to just some even number in general, right, like I to the 36, I would then recommend using, don't have to, like, if you have an I to the even power, you can write it as I, again, squared to the 18th. Let's see what else here. I cubed to the 12th. Right? You know, it's the same thing, and then I to the 4th to the 9th, stuff like that. Like, again, you can just go directly into this. See, I'm showing you 3 different ways of how to do this using these 3 facts, and so that's, again, whatever comes into your head first. And then, right, we have -1, I squared is -1 to the 18th, and then I cubed is -I to the 12th, I to the 4th is 1 to the 9th, and obviously we see that this one is, these 2 are kind of easier to deal with. Again, you can do this one as well, right? So hopefully you see here that this will just be +1, right? This will be, again, this is +1, so this has to also be +1, stuff like that. And really then, if you have, like, again, we saw 37, or we have some other kind of odd number, like I to the 59th, right? Just know that in order to make this into an even number, so we could just do I times, then subtract 1 here, right? I to the 58th, and then you just have this to the side, like put this all the way to the side, and just focus on this guy right here, which is an even number, which you can write in terms of these. So yeah, that's really it. This is all the advice I think I can give you. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So this is powers of I.